what show I really enjoyed for a while, but then it very quickly fell out of favor with me, and judging from what I've heard, most of its audience, and that was the show How I Met Your Mother. It was one of the most unique and interesting shows out there, had a very funny concept, and did some really clever things with that concept. So if you've never seen the show, it is exactly what it sounds like. It's a father telling his kids the story about how he met their mother. The entire series takes place in flashbacks, kind of detailing his life for however many years, as he dates all these women, and you're always wondering which one's going to be the mother. He seems to get in all these serious relationships, and they all don't work out. So it's this constant kind of romantic comedy mystery. And they did some really fun things with it. But it very quickly began to fall out of favor with its core audience, to the point where nobody really remembers it fondly anymore. Or if they do, it's only up to a point. There are a lot of reasons, but there are two main ones. The first one is that our main character, Ted Mosby, just became more and more unlikable as the show went on. He became such a self-serving ass that it became impossible to root for him or want to see him achieve any kind of goals. The side characters became more interesting and more sympathetic than he did. I mean, he became a guy who had no problem throwing his best friend under the bus multiple times if it meant he got the girl. So that became an issue. And then the final nail in the coffin came with the show's final episode, where it turns out, so they finally do meet the mother. We do know who it is. The mystery is solved. Hooray. But it turns out that he's telling his kids this story after her death, which would have been fine. That would have been fine for an ending. But it turns out it's not. We haven't been watching the love story of him and this woman that he's been pining for all these years. No, it turned out it was the love story between him and the girl he dated in the first season, who he was never right for anyway. So it was a huge kick in the balls to the entire fan base, saying, you weren't watching this love story, fuck that love story, we've been trying to tell you this other love story. So not only is it unsatisfying to the audience, but it, again, makes your lead into a huge fucking ass. So it became a very problematic show. And it left a lot of its fan base really wanting. And to that fan base, what I have to say is that if you are hoping for a better version of this same story, it does exist. It is out there. And that better version is 2008's Definitely Maybe, starring Ryan Reynolds. This is basically How I Met Your Mother, the movie. But it feels like where How I Met Your Mother made all of the wrong choices, this film feels like it made all of the right choices. And we're gonna use How I Met Your Mother as kind of the point of comparison, even though they're two separate genres. But I gotta say, this movie, it fits the criteria for a forgotten gem to a T. This is a film that virtually nobody acknowledged when it came out, and it seems like nobody is even aware it exists these days. So if I can get a couple people turned on to this, I'll feel like I've done my job. 1 second. Okay, we're back. Okay, so let's compare and contrast. So, what's the story? Well, the story is basically How I Met Your Mother, just with a couple of the details changed. So our main character is Ryan Reynolds, who is a young father who is in the process of getting divorced. His daughter, through, circumstances, asks him one night, while he has custody of her, to tell her the story of how he met her mother. How did this happen? And he reluctantly decides to do so and tells her, I'm going to change all the people's names. I'm not going to tell you which one your mother is. I'm going to tell you, have to kind of guess. So once again, we have that romantic comedy mystery, which I think is a great idea to hang your romantic comedy on. As I said in past romantic comedy reviews, it feels like a lot of them feel like they have to have some kind of gimmick. You know, something that is a little weird or out there to get people in. You can't just see a movie about two people falling in love. No, it's got to have some kind of bizarre hook. Well, that's the hook here, is that it's all told in flashback, and we, the audience, along with the daughter, played by Abigail Breslin, we need to figure out who the mother is. So, again, using the TV show as the point of comparison, let's look at where this movie goes right versus where that one went so wrong. Let's start with one of the main things. How I Met Your Mother, our main character of Ted Mosby is an absolute ass. He starts out as this kind of nice guy, you like him. He makes a few mistakes here and there, but generally he's a good egg. But by the end of the series, he's, like I say, he's a very self-serving, horrible person who never seems to get called on his bullshit. In contrast, our character here, played by Ryan Reynolds, is not an ass. He is not portrayed as a perfect human being. As he relates the story of his love life to his daughter, he acknowledges places where he made mistakes, sometimes little mistakes like being a smoker when he was a young man, to larger mistakes. And we see that he acknowledges these mistakes, he is aware of these mistakes, and they are contributing to the person that he is. I think Ryan Reynolds does an absolutely fabulous job in this movie. Ryan Reynolds is an excellent example of be careful what you wish for. I have always thought Ryan Reynolds to be a very talented actor and a very funny person. And I remember watching this movie and a few others that he had done back before he became kind of a big name and going, man, this guy is really good. Oh man, I really wish, more people knew about him. Well, now they do, and it's for the most douchey, irritating, self-referencing thing that it could be. I liked him way better before Deadpool. But that's just mine. I know a lot of people love Deadpool, but for me, yeah, no. But the character is likable, and Ryan Reynolds has a natural likability, a natural sense of humor. His jokes in this are funny, but they're not that kind of snarky, always winking to the camera, going, laugh, it's funny! The exchanges are very conversational. He feels real. And again, you see the change in him from the young man he is in the story that he's telling to the adult that he has become, the lessons that he has learned from the events that have happened to him, both positive and negative. Okay? So I think that's a huge, huge thing. While we're on that subject, this forms as a nice segue into the next bit. I think you also got to give props to Abigail Breslin in this movie. Everybody in this movie is good, and we're going to talk about them. But Abigail Breslin is very good in this. Abigail Breslin was one of the best child actors ever, in my opinion. She always had the perfect balance of intelligent enough to say some of these lines, but believability, so it wasn't just, she wasn't a Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen just spouting catchphrases. She had emotional range and really sells you on the characters that she was playing, and she does a great job here. That leads to another thing that this film, I think, did better ultimately than the show it's most closely related to. As stated, the the father in How I Met Your Mother is telling his kids the story, and we're not privy to why until the last season, but it almost seems like a punishment. You know, the kids even ask at the very beginning, are we being punished for why you're telling us this story? So it seems like a drag that they're being forced to listen to this. But in this version, the daughter is the one wanting to hear the story. And in both characters, so what you have here are two characters who are reliving this story. Ryan Reynolds, as he's revisiting all of his past issues, and his daughter, who's hearing it all for the first time. Both of them coming at the same story from completely different psychological points of view, and each looking for different answers. Abigail Breslin's character is trying to understand how this happens. You know, her parents are getting divorced. She's a fairly young kid, and is trying to understand how you go from being in love to not. You know, from a child's point of view, how did this happen? You know, because most people, most kids, they ask a parent something like that, and the answer you're going to get is something very similar to it's a complicated thing to explain. And when you go back and really peel back the layers of this, and this, it really is complicated. So she's trying to understand, you know, how her parents' marriage ended. He is trying to understand, ultimately, also the same reason. Why do my relationships keep failing? Which again offers a level of self-exploration that is not present in How I Met Your Mother. Ted never seems to ask, why am I alone? Why is this not working? I mean, he does in kind of that sad sack Charlie Brown, you know, why is the world so mean to me? But he never examines his own behavior, his own poor choices. It's always the fault of the other person. And here, it is not. He is really taking a critical look at the life that he led and the young man that he was. This all sounds like it's this deep psychological kind of tale. It's not. I think the psychology behind it is important because it informs how the story is told and related. But it is a comedy. It's a very light, romantic film, and it does that very well. So those two do a great job. And you also got to give big ups to the three prime suspects for who the mother is. So throughout this story, Ryan Reynolds has three primary girlfriends. He has Elizabeth Banks, who plays his first serious girlfriend, Rachel Weisz, who plays his second serious girlfriend, and Elsa Fisher as a female friend that he has had throughout the entirety of the story. And as you're watching, you're seeing the relationships build, expand, fall apart, get back together, you know, following the course of some people's actual romantic lives. You know, that just because you broke up with someone, you know, 16 years ago, or you knew someone 16 years ago, doesn't mean they can't come back into your life at a later point and suddenly become an important figure. And all three of them play very different characters. Elizabeth Banks is that first girlfriend, very pretty, very, you know, very much in love with him, but very much a young person. Rachel Weisz is a much more self-confident career woman, much more an intellectual equal, and Elsa Fisher is that kind of manic pixie dream girl that you need in romantic comedies. So each one fits a certain aspect of his personality. So you can see how one person can be attracted to a variety of different personalities. It's not just kind of a cookie cutter thing. One of the other interesting things this movie does is it takes advantage of the fact it's a period piece. It takes place in that faraway time of the 90s, which again, I always get weirded out thinking that that's a time period, but it is. And the filmmakers decided that it'd be an awesome thing if Ryan Reynolds' character's, emotional arc kind of mirrored that of the professional arc of Bill Clinton. So Ryan Reynolds is a worker on the Clinton campaign when he's first running for president. So it takes you all the way through his run in the primaries, and then he gets elected, and then re-elected, and then all of these sex scandals and the downward trajectory. I'm not sure how well that works. I think it's an interesting thing to hang your movie on, but I don't know. I think the movie could have worked without it, but it was very Clinton-centric. They really wanted to get that in there, which I guess it does make sense when you're looking at the story about somebody who was once very hopeful and then was quickly disillusioned by romance and whatnot. For those who weren't there, the Clinton personal life and professional life roller coaster was quite the trip to be on. Lots of ups and downs. Yay, we're up, the economy is great, everything's great, he's the great guy. Oh, you lied to all of us. That kind of thing. It's a weird little thing to hang a hat on. All of the characters are very fun. The only one I have any kind of real issue with is Kevin Kline plays a political author, a very pompous New York 90s political author who's always questioning, why we do things, everybody's terrible, nobody's really good kind of guy. Meanwhile, he's fucking all of his underage students. So, because again, romantic comedies need that one really over-the-top character, and that became him. And he's fine. He's not a deal breaker, but he is a very, I don't know, he's a little bit of a sore thumb of the movie. He's a character that doesn't feel like he fits in the world. He's a little bit too big for the world that they created. But that, I think, is the only real knock against this movie. The only other knock I could say in the "is this movie perfect" conversation is a very minor one, and that is, since the whole movie is told in flashbacks, you have the same actors playing the same characters in the different time periods, because it's not that far apart, but maybe 10, 20 years. Let's see. So it's from 1992 to 2008. So, yeah. And the thing is, none of the actors change physically from the first time you meet them to the last. Elizabeth Banks and Ryan Reynolds look exactly the same in the present as they did in the past. And that's not a knock necessarily. A lot of movies do that, but in a movie whose central conceit is showing how time changes a person, the fact that your actors look exactly the same gives you, the audience, the visual cue that all of this has happened within a fairly compressed time period. It's all, just happening within a couple months as opposed to a couple years. And that kind of sells it short when you're really looking at this. We're learning a long, complicated life story here. However, that being true, one of the reasons I like this movie is it borrows from the When Harry Met Sally book, in terms of, this is not a film where the two main characters meet, fall in love, have a falling out, then get back together at the end. I mean, it is that, but it's played out over years. These characters grow to know each other, they love each other, they have friendships, they have arguments, they build a relationship as opposed to suddenly being gifted one, which grounds it all. I also think the mystery is a lot of fun. The mystery such as it is of who the mother is, but there's a dual mystery. Who is the mother and who is the person he's going to end up with? It's a romantic comedy. So you can't end a romantic comedy on a downer. He's going to end up with somebody. So the question is not just who is Abigail Breslin's mother in this scenario, but who is the girl that he really wants to. What is the core reason these other relationships didn't work? It's because he was really in love with someone else that whole time. And who was that someone else? I think it's fairly easy to guess upon a first viewing, but it's still a fun path to get there. All in all, I find this to be a delightful movie. And one, again, that is based in the realistic happenings of relationships. You know, building a relationship over time. There are a lot of romantic gestures in the movie. You know, another thing romantic comedies are always big on is there must be some big romantic gesture. Of course, the cliche of, you know, chasing someone to the airport and stopping them. This one has romantic gestures, but they're much more realistic. For instance, one of the girls he dates has a favorite song, you know, I Have a Crush on You. And he goes and buys her all these CDs by all these different artists that all have the same cover of that song on it. That's something I could see myself doing or someone else doing. So it really feels like a grounded story, a very human story. And again, I know I preach on this a lot. I know I harp on it a lot. But it avoids the pitfalls of a lot of modern romantic comedies in that it is not afraid of actual human emotion. It's not afraid of introspection. It's not afraid of external emotions. It uses those as the basis to make the story work. And it really does. I think this is a charming film, delightful, heartwarming. It's a little heartbreaking. And done with a very clever script and an excellent cast. You know, we all know, you know, Ryan Reynolds would eventually get that fame that he's been looking for. Elizabeth Banks is one of the most interesting comedians and actors working today. A friend of mine made a point about how committed she is to all of her roles, and that the different roles that she plays are all just diametrically opposed, and yet they all seem to fit her. Ilsa Fisher, who plays April, the manic pixie dream girl, I always felt she had more spunk and more charm than her career has kind of let her explore. She's had a good career. She's been in a lot of things. She's comfortable. She's making a living. But, and you know, maybe again, I'm asking for it here. I felt she deserved a bit more of a push than she ever really received, in my opinion. But I think this is definitely the high point of her, you know, her career. I think it's probably her best role and a great character, and she's a lot of fun to watch. She's the energy of the entire production. So if you're a fan of romantic comedies and you've never seen this one, I strongly urge you to seek it out, have a good time. It's a cozy little film. It's a warm blanket. It's not going to blow your mind, but I think it will entertain you, and it might become a favorite like it has for me. So, that is definitely maybe. Find the one you love, snuggle up close, and have a rom-com night. And, as always, keep calm and carry on, and drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.